what are your thoughts of an inclusive process, as there are differing views on issues like all citizens of Fiji to be called Fijian, Fiji to be a secular state, there should be no discrimination based on race, gender and sexual orientation. I raise this issue because a lot of people, after they heard that there may be a review of the Constitution, they're wondering if some of the things like that has brought people together in some way or dispels all these issues in relation to discrimination may come back. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, firstly, although the 2013 Constitution has a good and very liberal Bill of Rights, all of the human rights, and that's protecting people from discrimination is one of them. There's problems. The Bill of Rights can be overridden by an ordinary law of Parliament at any time, which means that they're not really constitutionally protected. It means there's a statement of a right, but it can be undercut any time.
There are a lot of limitations?
There aren't at the moment, but any regime in the future that wanted to limit them has a virtually unfettered power under the Fiji Constitution. And that's not how constitutional rights are usually framed. The whole purpose of putting them into the Constitution is to make sure that they can't be undercut just by the government of the day. So the Fiji Constitution, although it has a good set of rights stated, they're very precarious. Any new regime that was, for example, say a highly Itauke focused, traditional Itauke values, government came to power, they wouldn't have to amend the Constitution to change the rights of people and to take away protection, for example, from Indo-Fijians from being discriminated against. They could do it by an ordinary act of Parliament. And if you've got a government that's got plenty of numbers in the House, they can do what they like. So the constitutional protection is not strong. What you would want in a highly participatory consultative process would be to make sure that the concerns of all are put on the table, and that a commission, a constitutional commission, for example, together with the Parliament or an elected constituent assembly, or it doesn't have to be with the Commission. There are other ways to come up with the proposals for the Constitution that go to the legislature to be framed. But however you do it, you want to make sure all groups have a chance for their voices to be heard, and then you frame the Constitution as much as possible to provide a balance between all the different concerns. So I would have thought there's not much risk that the current levels of protection would be undermined. What you would actually do by a new constitution making process would be to get the same set of rights, basically, perhaps with some changes, properly protected.
Let's talk about inclusive process. We've talked about the military. It led the coups in 87, 2 coups in 87, one in May, one in September. Then we had the 2000 coup, then we had 2006. Of course, the military then, when the coups finished and when we did have constitutions, immunity provisions were included to safeguard those who had conducted the coups. That's from 87 right up to 2006. Then we have the section 131(2) of the Constitution, of 2013 Constitution, states that it shall be the overall responsibility of the Republic of Fiji military forces to ensure at all times the security, defense and well-being of Fiji and all Fijians. A lot is being talked about in relation to this constitutional provision. People have called for this to be reviewed, while others say this gives good security to them. What are your thoughts on how these sections can be handled, knowing that you have handled conflict resolution and post-conflict resolution?
Well, the first thing to state is that on the face of it, that section, that subsection, does not give the military a role of being guardian of the Constitution. Being asked to look after the welfare of the people and the country is not very different from what most constitutions say, if they say anything about the military, and many don't. The aim of the military is, in most countries, to look after the needs of the people by protecting them from outside threats. The military is generally not tasked with looking after inside problems, except in very narrow circumstances, such as in states of emergency, and then only usually, as under the Fiji Constitution, only to a very limited extent for the period of the emergency, to the extent that it's necessary to deal with the emergency. So you can't just do anything as the military. It's got to be as permitted by the legislation in the emergency orders. So those words, on the face of it, do not give the Fiji military that role of guardians of the Constitution. And you would think if it was intended to give them that role, that it would have done so explicitly. So we're only looking at that section, 1312, and seeing it as giving the military the role of guardian of the Constitution, because that's what the military proposed in their submission to the Guy Commission. They put in a huge submission, over 100 pages, and that's what they argued for. And of course, since then, the military have on occasion said that their role is to be guardians of the Constitution, and they've justified particular things they've done at various times. Not very often, but just on a few times since 2000.